Yo, what up, what up, what up? Yo, welcome. You know what I'm saying? Yo, look, man, this is, these are dark times we living in today. And, I'm here with my boy, I'm saying, Nomad Capital stuff. And we out here, like, checking. Yo, he has a lot to say. Me and him were just having a conversation. It was a great conversation. So I was like, you know what, dude, look, I want to make this video about what's going on because Donald Trump said that he wants to start nationalizing businesses that the government's trying to bail out. And me and Nomad Capitalists were talking about, guns and FEMA camps. And, like, I hate to be that dude, but, like, we're on that level where individuals, are going to be put into FEMA camps. And I said, look, if you're going to go into a FEMA camp, they have every right to tell you what you can and cannot have inside of that camp. And especially if it's a medical facility, right? Like, the doctors are going to be like, well, no, we don't want people to have because we don't want to have, the coronavirus and gunshot wounds, right? Because people are dumb. And, you herd cattle and they're that close to each other on a regular basis. That's kind of my thinking about that, right? But on the same point, like, they shouldn't be going to your house and taking your firearms. That's a different animal altogether. Like, if you can stash your shit somewhere and then go to the camp because you can't take care of yourself, that's a whole different animal. So where are you at with this, Nomad Capitalist?
So one, it doesn't matter if you choose to stay in your house, because if you're under suspicion of being in contact with the quote-unquote disease, you'll be basically kidnapped by the largest mafia in the world and taken away. All your property will be damaged by spraying chemicals on it for the needs of, like, sanitizing it, anything that is nothing like metal based. So most precious metals that people don't own, because that's like a minority of the population, will be seized. And then on top of the fact that anything that's like a car, that'll get confiscated because, oh, it's infected. And just like when you go into these FEMA camps, they take away all property that you go in with as a form of control and allowing for, like, feeling helpless and disarmed. And that takes away the confidence in the individual and said group to keep them under control from resisting what is basically giant amounts of violating of your rights. Like, they've officially thrown out the Constitution just for the fact of freedom of assembly has now been abolished unofficially or officially, because in most areas that are highly affected or quote called by the numbers that are being said by what's that agency that is publishing those numbers?
Wait, which numbers?
The National Health Association Administration. They're basically saying that New York and a couple other key cities that keep our economy running, that they're the highest in infection rate. But they could just easily fudge those numbers to give a reason to come in there and take control of all industries to then nationalize them, like you're saying.
Well, no, like here's like where we get down to with this. Like, Trump said he would consider. Well, here's the thing, though. But, like, Trump said he would consider government stakes in companies seeking bailouts, right? But the truth is, like, the truth is stranger than fiction on this one, which is an odd situation because, like, literally that's socialism. Like, you're nationalizing industries. We're in socialist territory. And I get what you're saying about the fact that, like, they're wiping their ass with the Constitution. That's an absolute fact.
Well, that's not even the main point. Well, the main point is that the association that claims to post these numbers of infection could easily just be fudged numbers like they did in China for key areas for industry to then take control and then prevent damage to those infrastructure, and then pull all political dissidents into an old temporary hospital that's inside of a hotel that then was collapsed with 70 people in it, and now only 12 are alive as far as I'm aware. And just from pure math perspective for a country, it's cheaper to take care of 12 people than it is 70 if they actually were sick. And if you assumed all of them were political dissidents or people who talked badly about the country, you have 70 people that are considered political dissidents, and now only 12 of them exist. And just either way you look at it, it's beneficial to herd everyone up into an old building that's not been like inspected and then make it collapse and then kill off the people who aren't able to take care of themselves. And the fact that it's even in the culture, it's been built up since the destruction of the nuclear family to allow for like people who are preppers and everything else you can think of that's dealing with being prepared is seen as weird and like not a good thing, and you're being stigmatized for it. And do you wonder why? Maybe it's because the government doesn't want you to be prepared, so then they can have more control over you in a widespread panic situation. If everyone was prepared, there would be no panic. They just blow it off like they do in Mexico when their peso inflates. I can hear you.
All right, cool. All right, there we go. OBS
So, but I can't.
fucking retarded. Yo, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, cool. I don't know what the fuck.
Just
Yeah,
like
my computer just went like ridiculous. Nah, like legit, my OBS wasn't recording my voice. It wasn't you. You know, what I mean, it was like the whole thing. All right, so okay,
Kinda like
let's.
Verizon. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, can you hear me now? Right. Okay, so here's the problem though. Like we're assuming things because like we don't know any real facts about what happened in China as far as these hotels, right?
I can't say for certain uh, on on basically a on the record. I can't say, but I'll leave it at.
Well, you have that, right? But you also have the fact that, like, it's not the federal government who's shutting down places like New York.
Oh, they're because of where I live. They're taking control of the place where I live because of the trade routes and everything that goes in and out of the state and cities that I live near.
Yeah,
So
we have the same problem here in Pennsylvania. Right? We have that problem here where like you like they we we're like the largest trade area in the world as far as like in the United States anyway as far as goods coming in and out of, right? But our governor just shut down the entire state. Everything that is absolutely non-life, I mean non-essential for life. You know what I mean? Like they said, you are now shut down, and we cannot. You're not allowed to operate, right? But that's the governor. That's not the Fed. This is not a federal thing, and this is the problem that you're running into with this argument that it's a national, organization of, national health
I
organization or
was
whatever.
talking about China in that example and
Right.
how it's sort of taking the tip from China and doing something similar on a smaller
Well, no, they're
scale.
following Europe is what they're doing. They're following places like Spain and European nations and what they're doing. Right? They're not
Well, they're
following.
following the playbook from the UN. That's what they're doing. If you didn't know about the uh, thing that they were making basically they made a declaration or promise or goal to try and reduce the world's population. And this is seeming to fall right in line with what they were putting together for 2020.
Oh wait, yo, hang on, though, right? Because like, let's be real about things when it comes down to it, right? The mentality is like if they wanted to stand here and get rid of some of the world's population, you would just let this shit run through.
No, it's because feminism doesn't do it fast enough for them. Because people like men in the market of the dating pool pull out and become vegetable men like they do in China, because of the political and social sphere of like what it takes to be a father and how it's kind of a little bit screwed.
Okay.
So
But like
that's not
that's
fast
yo.
enough.
What I'm saying though
So
is,
they
if
need
you
to
wanted,
accelerate it.
if you
Just like they
wanted
put
to get
nitrous
rid
in
of people,
podcasting.
if the UN wanted to get rid of people, and like we were following those type of orders, we just let this bitch run through. We let the the coronavirus run through the population.
Well, that's another thing, is that they're kind of doing that with the vaccines. If you weren't aware, AIDS is partially the vaccine for AIDS. Seems to be actually something that's filled with stuff like mercury. It's enough that it doesn't kill you instantly, but it lowers your immune system, and other things kill
Okay,
you.
yo, look. All right, no. All right, thermals. What it is the marisol, right? That's the actual stuff that contains the mercury inside of vaccines, and that hasn't been used since like the late '90s, early 2000s, and it's out of
Maybe
all
you should
vaccines now.
try and look on the I guess the deep web a little bit, and look at some of the articles that are being published about the ingredients in some of these new vaccines coming out for the coronavirus.
Right. Well, like the stuff that they're bringing out, the new vaccines for the coronavirus aren't out yet. They're not. They don't have any vaccines for this yet at all. They have nothing. Now,
That's
not a
announced
nothing.
to the public.
No, but they have nothing out. Period. Like they're barely in clinical trials for what's going on with these vaccines, right? And like even the treatments for these vaccines are just old drugs, right? They're like newly manufactured old drugs. What they're talking about, the stuff that they used to treat malaria with back in the 1950s. Right, and they're saying, oh, they're having promising studies, in things like lab rats or whatever the case might be. But like, yeah, it's not mercury. And if you're gonna stand here and go, well, like back in the 1950s, it had mercury in it. Like, of course it did. It was the 1950s, right? 1950s, they were out here putting, radium on their skin and stuff. They didn't know shit about nothing. They had asbestos everywhere. They were, smoking cigarettes without filters and shit. They were bananas back in the 1950s. So like, I get what you're saying, right? But like, I never chalk up to malice, right? Which you can, look at with, incompetence when it really comes down to it. Because the government's terrible.
So,
they're awful. They're horrible.
yes.
You know what I mean? But like, legit, this is not, like, for instance, Pennsylvania being shut down is not a federal thing. That's a state thing. New York being shut down, it's not a state thing. That's a federal thing. The National Guard being called out in New York, that's a state thing. The governor is in control of the National Guard. Like, if the federal government has no control over the National Guard. None. The National Guard for the state is the state's actual military. It's literally like the police force. If they want the police force in New York to go do something in Illinois, the governor the governor in New York has to release them to go to Illinois in order to do it.
That's not hard. You just need a little blackmail, considering all politicians have something on them.
Yo, look, you sound like my boy Max Maria and shit, right? All right, so let's read this article real quick. You know what I'm saying? Just because I want to touch on this because this is kind of important. All right, President Donald Trump said Thursday he would consider taking an equity stake in companies accepting federal aid. Trump didn't specify which company he was referring to, but called out those that have bought back stock. Delta, America, Southwest, American Airlines have collectively spent $39 billion over the last 5 years buying back shares. The airline is seeking more than $50 billion in aid. President Donald Trump said Thursday he would consider having the federal government take equity stakes in companies accepting federal aid in a bailout geared towards blunting the economic impact from the widening coronavirus outbreak. When asked by a reporter whether he supports the government taking an equity stake in certain companies, he responded, "I do. I really do." People would not say specifically which companies he would want the government to take a stake in, but did expand on the kinds of companies in which the move might make sense. People are coming in for money, in some cases through no fault of their own, but in some cases where they did certain things over the course of the years, buying back stock, he said. Trump earlier in the briefing said he would not oppose barring companies that receive federal assistance during the coronavirus from conducting stock buybacks. The four biggest U.S. airlines, look, seriously, dude, did they this is the problem with these stupid CNBC people, with people in like the mainstream media, legit. because like 4 or 5% of the entire U.S. GDP for the past 3 years has been in stock buybacks. Right? It's something like, it was almost, I think it was like $900 billion a year has been done in stock buybacks. And they're talking about the 50 billion. Like, this is the fucking problems, right? Like Ford Motor Company. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You're not including the Fed buying back stocks from companies inside the U.S. and other.
They're not though. The Fed has never bought stocks in open market, market operation.
Bonds that are then borrowed.
They buy mortgage-backed securities and they buy treasury bonds. That's all the Fed does. It does not buy actual bonds of companies. They buy treasury bonds and then they monetize the treasury bonds and put it into the actual open market in order to capitalize and liquidate the market. It's a whole different animal. I know how the Fed operates, and like that's why, like when they sat here and they said the Fed's going to put $1.5 trillion in, something like 200 billion of it was supposed to be in mortgage-backed securities, which that's retarded because we don't have a mortgage problem at the moment. Have also been stuck by the pandemic. Ford, Fiat, Chrysler were temporarily closed. All U.S. factories that halt production could create an immediate crunch for the automakers as demand for cars declined amid a COVID-19 outbreak. As an equity stake is unlikely to be the company's form or relief, the move is offered to dilute shareholders and gives the government greater ability to oversee a company. General Motors gave a stake in its the U.S. during the auto bailout in 2009 when it ultimately paid back the government and had to wipe out shareholders in return. Many industry, including the airlines, have therefore sought relief in the form of direct grants or other means. The hope for many lobbyists is that the bailout looks similar to that which the government offered the airline industry after 9/11. The package originally offered airlines a total of $5 billion direct grants and $10 billion loan guarantees. Congress is currently hashing out a stimulus plan with the administration that could top $1 trillion. On Thursday, Trump did not rule out the idea that more aid could be needed if the disease is not contained. The administration has also in recent days floated a proposal that would include $500 billion for the ailing airline industry, as well as $150 billion for other distressed sectors. It was not immediately clear which industries would be covered, but Trump has called out the cruise and hotel industry multiple times for their ails, saying they are to blame. All right, they're not to fucking blame. These fucking people are retarded. What up?
One word is hyperinflation.
Yeah, that's where my mentality is, most definitely.
I'd keep all of your money, if you can, out of the banks before there is a bank run. There's been bank runs in my area already.
Yeah. Like, people are snatching money out their banks just because, like, they don't know whether or not they can actually, get their mony back out. Like, that's some legitimate shit. Like, people are concerned that they're not gonna be able to get liquid out.
That would have worked in 2008 and the Great Depression, but this time it's national. Therefore, I don't even think cash is going to help you. You literally need something like silver or gold, something like that is outside of the government's control. So then you can ensure whatever the Fed does when they probably print, 30 trillion by the end of 2020 up. That's just a guess based off of how much they're spending already.
Well, let me put it like this, right? All right, so I know that the U.S. dollar is going to be used to bail out the rest of the world, right? And that tends to be how it works. That's why I always say there's like two separate markets for the U.S. dollar. I mean, there's domestically, the stuff that like we get in our pockets that we chase bread with and milk and eggs and tires and cars and whatever the case might be.
You
and then
have to do that.
Well, no. Hang on. Wait. But there's a separate form of the U.S. dollar, which is the international markets, right? Where they stand here and they use these clearing houses to do deals between, brokers in different countries all throughout the world. And they do, leverage buyouts and all this other stuff that they do with the money, to create derivatives. That's a whole different market, right? And they've been using our dollar to prop up their currency and their banks and their central banks all over the world in each of these countries, in Europe and in China and Asia. And if they end up standing here using their dollars to be able to sit here and actually bail their shit out and handle their business, right? We're going to end up bailing out the rest of the world because we're just going to sit here and print liquid over and over until I mean, like it just the printing press is just constantly running. Like they've already pumped like 3 trillion into the markets in the past 3 months, and like it hasn't really affected prices. That's why like they pumped what was it, $6 trillion during the bailouts, back from 2008 until 2010. It never really affected like the prices for what the hell we have, other than when you're talking about loans for like mortgages or cars, right, which are an internationally traded thing when you're talking about Japan and Korea and China and all these things being involved. So, but like here's the thing though, if they put money into the pockets of Americans, because it went from 1,000 right one time to now it's 1,200, and they're talking 3 times it's gonna happen, plus $500 per kid. You're gonna talk about enough money that you're literally going to double, maybe even more, the amount of actual liquid cash in the United States itself. And it's all going to chase nothing but food because all these other businesses are shut down. You're talking hyperinflation at that point.
Well, not to mention, in general, when you print money to solve a problem, the next time you have to do that, you have to square what you just printed to then solve the same problem.
What do you mean you got to square what you just printed?
So if you print $100 to then solve an issue with like prices or whatever, you have to then square that, and then you get what you need for the next time, and then you do it again and again and again, and then that's how we get like trillions of dollars for what they're doing.
Well, yeah, but like here's the thing though, is like what they square that issue is they sell treasury bonds, right? But the thing is, the rest of the world's not buying treasury bonds anymore.
It doesn't matter. The treasury bonds and the interest rate is at a 0 right now. And it might go to negative.
Well, yeah, like here, that's the other thing too, is like you're talking about negative interest rates. That's a whole nother bag that I haven't even really covered at all yet. At least when it comes down to this channel, I haven't even had any type of conversation about negative interest rates. But Trump, wants to do that, and he wants the Fed to do it. And I think the Fed might be out of gas. And the Fed is the one who are actually just holding most of the treasury bonds. Like we owe ourselves the money at this point. Like it's not even other countries. Like people like China has all these treasury bonds and Saudi Arabia and Russia, and all these places. Like no. Like Japan's like a number one holder of bonds, but that's just like the amount of money that the Fed holds, the amount of bonds that the Fed's holding right now is ridiculous. It's obscene. That's really where it is. Like what happens when like. What do we can't keep doing this. Legit.
Well, my summary is you need to get your money out of the banking system into silver or something. Get your passport before everything completely shuts down. So you have a way of moving between borders, and possibly if all else fails and we have that wall built by Mexican border and Canada's border, then if there's no other option, you can become an illegal immigrant, because it's literally better to be an illegal immigrant inside of a foreign country instead of inside of the US if the dollar hyperinflates.
I don't know. I think like my personal mentality is this. Like I don't think there's anywhere to run when it comes down to it. Like Canada's a possibility, but Mexico, they don't even speak English. If you don't speak Spanish, that's a bad idea. You're just going to end up getting robbed and probably sold into slavery.
You don't know enough about Mexico, but that is mostly propaganda that you've been told probably for most of your life.
About what? They speak Spanish?
No, they speak Spanish, but Spanish is not the official language. There is over, I think, 50 languages inside of Mexico.
Well, yeah, like there's a bunch of dialects down in the Yucatan and
here's
things of this
another
nature.
Thing. When dealing with the law enforcement, the rare times that you do, if you speak your fluent language and it happens to be English or Portuguese, they're required by law to then stop and hold you wherever you are if they need to, and then go and find another officer who speaks English or whatever language you're speaking, your native language, to then give the least amount of misunderstanding when dealing with legal.
So I just looked up Mexico, right? The most widely spoken languages aside from Spanish are Nuati and Maya, right? And that's 1.7 and 850,000 people. None of those things
Yeah,
say English, all right? Yo, look, they don't
it
speak
doesn't matter.
English. If you don't speak Spanish, it's probably not a good idea to be trying to hide somewhere in a place where you don't know the language.
The point is legally they need to get a translator.
What is this
That's
legally
not.
thing? It's this is there is no legally anymore. Your chances of running into a government official and then running into a regular person, right? Are you know what I mean? Like the chances of running into like a regular criminal versus a a government official are much higher running into a criminal. Like no, like don't go to Mexico. It's really not a good idea. Like legit, stand here and fight. Like that's your best bet. Arms and firearms and ammo. You know what I mean? Like this is the best place you could possibly be. Like and don't give up on this country because there's really no other place to run to. Everywhere else in the world's pretty much socialist, and you're going to get murked out. Like other than like Europe, you can go to if you can get to Europe, that's not a bad idea. But I highly doubt you're going to be able to get on a plane to do it.
I'm not emotionally nor physically invested in the U.S. I'm not even natively a U.S. citizen. I basically got my stuff when I moved out of where I was born, and I had legal presidency to be Mexican and U.S. citizen when I was younger, and then I gave up one of them because I didn't know any better.
Yeah,
So I have a different point of view, being that I used to be a local. I still don't speak Spanish anymore. I used to be able.
yeah, I feel you. You know what I mean? But like as I said, running to another country where they don't speak English is probably not a good idea.
I guess it's a cultural and age difference for point of view, being that I used to be a local and you
Yeah, like you're originally Spanish. It's a different situation, you know what I'm saying, when you're just a regular white person. Like I could possibly go to Italy, like maybe. Just only because like I have family there in the old world. You know what I mean? I could be all right, but like legit going to Mexico is probably not a good idea for the vast majority of Americans. And legit, you're not going to be able to take your metal on a plane to go to Italy. You can't take your silver and gold on a plane to go across unless you hit like you catch a boat. You know what I mean? That's the only way you're getting your silver and gold across the ocean.
which isn't terribly hard. But
I feel you. Like legit, I think getting on a boat would probably be easier than getting on a plane, especially if you have enough cash. You know what I mean? Be a stuff.
well, no, I could. I've literally looked into this in last month. I could get a boat uh, for about $250 with food, where you have to bring your own food that isn't something that will spoil. It has to be like freeze dried or bacon, just something that doesn't spoil from moisture. So that's not bad. That's the same as a plane ticket in some areas. Um, and like you just can sleep on the.
All right, yo, look, I'm gonna end this video. Right, this is getting to be about a half hour long on some nonsense. So like, yo, look, you know what I mean? Here's the situation. They're bringing in socialism. You know what I mean?
Get your passport.
Yo, I think it's a little late to be getting a passport. You know what I'm saying? So
If you do the right Googling, you can get whatever you need.
I feel you. I feel you. You know what I mean? Yo, silver, gold, ammos, guns, nigga. Like, yo, that's where you're at. Yo, look, guns and ammo, 1 and 2, baby. You know what I mean? It is what it is. First and second step. So I'm going to holler at y'all. Peace be like, man. Later.